Can I have your attention, please? I would kindly ask you to take your seats, the latest till 9:20, because the President of the Republic of Cyprus will be arrived here at 9:30. Please, till 9:20, be seated in your seats. Thank you.
Ένα, δύο, τρία, τέσσερα. A. A, hey. Ένα, δύο, τρία, τέσσερα. A, hey. Τέσσερα. Ένα, δύο, τρία, τέσσερα. A, hey. Ένα, δύο. Πιο διπλά.
Ladies and gentlemen, the process will be mostly in Greek language and some English, so please use the headphones provided if needed. Εκλεκτοί προσκεκλημένοι, αγαπητοί φίλοι και φίλες. Good morning and welcome. Bonjour and bienvenue. Dobry utra and dobro pожаловать. Καλώς ήρθατε στη Λευκοσία. Καλώς ήρθατε στην Κύπρο.
Welcome to Nicosia, welcome to Cyprus, welcome to the Mediterranean, welcome to the easternmost edge of Europe. Welcome to the island where Europe, Asia, and Africa meet. Welcome to the island of hospitality, of hope, of solidarity, and conciliation of peoples. I welcome you on behalf of all the Cypriots to this 9th UNICE Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference that we are very happy and honored to host. I welcome you to Cyprus, where the blue of the sky meets the blue of the sea, blends into the green of the forests, caresses the yellow of the grains. Here, we will see a short sketch that blends the old with the new. We will have poetry by a traditional poet, Michailidis. We will have engraver, Chambis, also a combination of very rich cultural traits that reflects the cycle of renewal of nature as it is celebrated in ancient customs and legends. Also, we'll see the importance of water. We will see the ceremonies that of the peoples that lived off the earth.
Υπέροχο, σωστά.
That was beautiful, wasn't it? Popular legends that embrace our island as much as the sun and the sea do. These legends are reminiscent of the past. They teach us, they give us incentives for a better future. Now we will see two short films on how this was all put together and what it took to turn the Philoxenia Center into what we see now. And of course, at this point, we have to thank all the people who have been working for over 1 year in order for us to be able to welcome you here today so that we could work without interruptions and without any problems.
The UNECE 9th Ministerial Conference for EFE has been designed and planned on sustainability principles, focused on 6 key areas. Refillable glass bottles will be used instead of plastic water bottles, and disposables will be avoided by using crockery. Because we all like our plates to be fairly full, we will use smaller plates to ensure that we don't overfeed ourselves or the trash bin, and surplus food will be offered to those in need. We will utilise our local suppliers and prioritise low-carbon meals, such as sustainable vegetarian options. Paper waste will be reduced by opting for digital communication. Reusing and recycling branding material, and training all participants as to how to perform in a more sustainable way. Electricity usage will be minimised and carefully monitored. Products displaying a high star energy efficiency rating will be opted for, and LED bulbs will be used. To reduce transport emissions, walking will be encouraged, and shuttles and buses will be supplied. Gifts will be locally crafted and organic. The plants will be replanted for greening schoolyards. Proper waste management logistics will be established and bins readily available. Finally, social media push notifications will allow visibility for exhibitors, eliminating flyers. We will choose products from local sources, attract spectators by organising side events, and contribute to local environmental causes and charities by offering participants an option of a donation in one's name rather than a swag item. By adhering to these key sustainability principles, we hope to offer a conference that leaves the tiniest carbon footprint, but makes an enormous difference, proving that we can indeed be the change we want.
The effort we made here to plan and implement a conference based on sustainable values and principles, we hope it will not just be one example over time, but it will come into our daily life. And now I call to the floor the President of the Republic of Cyprus, Mr. Anastasiadis, to address the 9th UNECE Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference. Secretary General of the UN for Environment, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm particularly happy to welcome you to this opening ceremony of the 9th conference of the Economic Commission for Europe. This is very important for environmental development. The declarations of UNECE are a point of reference for the countries to shape their own policies. Hosting the conference here is a great honor for us, since this is the first time that it takes place in the Mediterranean region, and the Mediterranean is very vulnerable to climate change, as we all know. Distinguished friends, given the critical character of conditions and the realities, we need to take decisive measures, policies, in order to make sure that we have sustainable policies for the planet. No doubt here in your plenaries, there will be a lot of information, and many distinguished speakers will be heard today. These are all extremely important for us to take to heart in order to take measures to protect our environment. There are well-targeted themes for the conferences for crucial points. There is a need that great infrastructure works will go hand in hand with sustainable development goals and respect for the environment as specified in the Agenda 2030. The second unit has to do with the circular economy in tourism, aiming to reduce the environmental impact of this sector by reducing energy consumption, by reducing greenhouse gases, and also management of waste. The third, but also equally important pillar has to do with the strategy for education for sustainable development that will sensitize young people and contribute to the achievement, to the completion of Agenda 2030. The policy documents and the ministerial statement that will be adopted at the end of the conference will set the guidelines for designing further policies and actions at national, European, and international level. This effort for sustainable development is our responsibility. We need to respond to what young people want, namely to live on a planet that will offer prosperity with them and that they can live in harmony with nature and all living things. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to deal with these challenges that we face, Cyprus has adopted a cohesive and and holistic environmental policy to reduce the impacts of pollution on public health and ecosystems, adopting circular economy principles, the rational management of our natural resources, and of course, the effective contribution to averting climate change. At the same time, what characterizes the sensitivity and the concerns of the state for these issues is shown by the fact that through the plan for resilience, we have various actions and reforms amounting to over 500 million euros in order to transition into the green economy. In addition, other green development projects amounting to 300 million euros are allocated for the 21 to 27 period. I'm giving you a lot of numbers here, and I know that many of you coming from larger and greater countries might think these amounts are too small, but of course we are but a very small island here. Cyprus also participates actively and takes initiatives in international and regional level to deal with the global environmental and energy issues. Indicatively, the Republic of Cyprus has the presidency of the Committee of the UN for Education for Sustainable Development, ESD, and that shows how Cyprus is very involved in these issues. We also have an initiative for Mediterranean ESD for sustainable development, which was adopted by all Mediterranean countries. I want to here say how pleased I am that in the context of the 9th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference, there will always be the 3rd high-level meeting of education and environment ministries on based on the goals and the targets of the agenda up to the year 2030. The most ambitious plan for our role in protecting the environment is our initiative in dealing with the climate crisis in the broader area of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East. In coordination with the states of the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle Eastern countries, we will undertake actions cross-border primarily to mitigate the destructive effects of the crisis. This initiative is fully developed now, and following a common invitation by myself and the President of Egypt, we will have a meeting in the margins of the global conference of the UN, which will take place in Sharm el-Sheikh next in November. This initiative is based on the regional action plan that was drafted by a great number of experts in the Cyprus Institute and aims to reduce carbon footprint, the greenhouse gases, also to move into cleaner forms of energy, to give incentives to the industry to move towards greener technologies and also for greener employment. Dear friends, dear ministers, as I mentioned, choosing Cyprus to host this conference not only satisfies us, but honors us, because we take it as a recognition of the will and the decisiveness of the Republic of Cyprus to contribute actively to our common effort to combat climate change. In conclusion, I would like to congratulate very warmly everyone who worked to organize this conference, especially the officers of the United Nations, the competent ministries and agencies of Cyprus, and all the other bodies. I address to you, the distinguished scientists, that by your presence give so much honor to the conference, to welcome you in Cyprus, and once again to wish a success to your conference. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize because I have to leave directly to the airport. I need to catch a flight, and I thank you for your understanding.
Ευχαριστούμε τον εξοχότατο πρόεδρο της Κυπριακής.
We thank His Excellency, President of the Republic of Cyprus, Mr. Anastasiadis, for that welcoming speech, and we wish him a safe trip.
Είναι επίκον λοιπόν να αναλάβουμε τις ευθύνες και
So we have to bear the responsibilities that come with keeping to our subjects. We want to make this conference the greatest environmental and cultural celebration. And with that, I want to call to the floor Mrs. Olga Ayerovna to address our conference.
Nicholas Anastasiadis needed to leave us. His message still resonates with us. So, Your Excellency, President of the House of Representatives, Mrs. Anita Demetriou, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's really my big honor and pleasure to address you today in this wonderful city of Nicosia, in this beautiful Congress Center, Philoxenia, that we have seen just a video how it was growing for us to be here today. And Philoxenia indeed means in English hospitality. And that is really a great characteristics of the inhabitants of Cyprus, of this ancient land. So it's very symbolic. I welcome the great interest aroused by the 9th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference, for which my organization, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, has the privilege of providing the secretariat, and the preparation of which brought together all our trusted partners, what is UNEP, UNESCO, UNWTO, and others. Today's ministerial conference is the 9th since the Environment for Europe process began 31 years ago, when the political map of our region was quite different from today. The Environment for Europe process began in the region still sharply divided along social, economic, political lines, with a vision and hope of contributing to healing of these divisions. And 31 years ago, it succeeded by offering countries a forum for closer regional cooperation on environmental issues. It delivered important products and outcomes, and let me just name a few of them. First, the EC program on environmental monitoring and assessment, and the one on environmental performance reviews, Then the pan-European biological and landscape diversity strategy, the convention access to information, public participation in decision-making and access to justice in environmental matters that we know as Aarhus Convention. Then we have the pan-European strategy to phase out leaded petrol, and the EC strategy for education for sustainable development, several protocols to the UN EC conventions, for instance, Air Convention, ESPO Convention, Aarhus Convention, Water Convention. Then we have the environmental strategy for Eastern European, Caucasian, and Central Asian countries. We have the Framework Convention, the Protection and Sustainable Development of the Carpathians, Astana Water Convention, Batumi Action for Cleaner Air that we know as BACA. And finally, I would list here Batumi Initiative on Greening the Economy that we know as a Big E. So after all those successes, it is so painful to recognize that our region is once again facing another divisive and tragic crisis. And that is war in Ukraine, with devastation to the lives of so many people. This war also puts regional cooperation mechanisms like the Environment for Europe to the test. Will we be able to pursue common goals, whether global or regional, sectoral or cross-cutting, in such circumstances? And the Nicosia Conference must answer all these questions. I hope that our answer will be clear and unequivocal. Yes, we have common goals, and yes, we are able to cooperate to achieve those goals together. The Environment for Europe process has done this in the past and can do so in the future and today if we act together. In our current context, the word together indeed has several meanings, so cleverly evoked in the colorful logo of this Nicosia conference. Today in this room are together the distinguished representatives of the environmental and education sector. They are together the delegates from Europe, Asia, Africa, America, and I would particularly like to greet the representatives of these countries and regions who have come to cooperate with us in our region today. There are together also the governmental and non-governmental professionals. There are together those who saw and even contributed to the Dobříš Conference in Czech Republic back in 1991. And the young people who were born decades later. If the Environment for Europe process can bring together so many people, groups, surely we should be able to continue it, and yes, together. Finally, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to warmly thank the generous and hospitable hosts of our conference, the people and the government of Cyprus, and all the great colleagues of the host country secretariat who have put so much efforts in organizing the Nicosia conference. We look forward to continued fruitful cooperation with Cyprus, the competent chair of the UNEC Steering Committee on Education for Sustainable Development. And just in conclusion, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I wish us the success of this conference. Our region needs this process, needs it to be successful. And I know that we are going to meet those expectations together. Thank you for your attention.
Ευχαριστούμε εξαιρετικά την κυρία Αλκαγέροβα για την εδώ παρουσία της και για την στοχευμένη ομιλία την οποία μοιράστηκε μαζί μας.
We thank very much Ms. Olga Algagerova for her presentation. And now I want to call to the floor Mrs. Sonia Layton-Cohn.
Thank you, Olga. Excellency, Madam Anita, ministers, other excellencies, distinguished guests, friends and colleagues. Cyprus has given birth to so many famous sons and daughters. Among them is Zeno of Citium, the founder of the Stoic school of philosophy. Stoicism has seen something of a revival in the recent years. Its teachings pepper the pages of self-help books, exhorting us to live a simpler, more virtuous life. What is often forgotten, however, is that Stoic philosophy was founded on a deeply held belief in the importance of nature. Indeed, the entire goal of life, Zeno said, is living in agreement with nature. We have failed to heed these sage words. Almost everywhere we look, humility is out of balance with the living world. It seems we are at war with nature. The triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution is rapidly destroying our only life support system. Catastrophic impacts and unprecedented suffering lie ahead unless we act now. Even in Europe, one of the most advanced regions on our earth, progress in addressing the crisis is patchy. Over the last 30 years, the region has undergone profound socio-economic and political changes that have put immense pressure on the environment. A massive move from rural to urban and coastal areas, richer societies that use and waste more, and populations that are increasing mobile. The impacts are clear. The Mediterranean and Black Seas are overfished. Pollution and waste are still rising. Forests are disappearing. Fossil fuels still make up 78% of the energy mix driving climate change that is then drying up the region's rivers, making it harder to grow food and fueling devastating wildfires and heat waves. At risk if we fail to act is nothing short of the health and well-being of the region's peoples. But it's not too late to reverse course, nor do we lack the solutions to do so. In fact, we know exactly what needs to be done to transform the sectors that are responsible for the most of the harm. Eliminating harmful subsidies can cut greenhouse gas emissions and reverse the loss of biodiversity. Circular economies and business practices can dramatically reduce waste. Nature-based solutions can build resiliency to climate shocks. This conference will also focus on infrastructure and tourism, rightly so, as both play a major role in addressing the interlinked crisis threatening the region. The pandemic hit Europe's tourism sector. Visitors' numbers plummeted. But this is changing as countries loosen COVID restrictions. Before millions of visitors return to the region to explore its rich history, Europe has a real opportunity to transform the sector. This means that governments finding ways to work with tourist organizations, cities and regions to plan the transition to circular business models. It means scaling up international long-distance rail infrastructure and travel, increasing electric charging infrastructure in tourist hotspots, and encouraging people to take more holidays in their own countries. It means transforming the way waste is disposed, the way energy and water is used, food systems and supply chains works. The Bari to Naples railway in Italy is a great example of the type of transport the tourism sector will need if it's going to cut emissions. It's also a great example of what we mean when we talk about sustainable infrastructure. It's an example of what happens when you make sustainability a primary concern at the very start of a large-scale infrastructure project. How factoring the cost of pollution, climate risk, and the damage to ecosystems can change how infrastructure is built, limiting the harm to the environment and to public health, strengthening resilience and boosting the economy. To achieve this, government ministries will need to work together. Too often, environmental issues are siloed and environmental concerns are sidelined. But the triple planetary crisis is fundamentally connected to and affects every single ministry, from finance to trade to culture to education. So we must find ways to deepen cooperation between and among ministries. Underpinning all of this is the need for greater education. We must equip our citizens with the knowledge and skills they need to lead healthy and productive lifestyles in harmony with nature and with concern for social values, gender equality, and cultural diversity. Armed with knowledge, citizens can play an active role in environmental governance or learn the skills they need to find sustainable jobs. If this region can do this, if it can roll out sustainable education, if it can transform its tourism sector and green its infrastructure, then Europe can begin to reverse the negative trends we're seeing today. If we can seize the opportunity at this conference to show a shared vision and common commitment towards these aims, we will send an important signal of serious ambition to our citizens and to the world. And if we can heed the philosopher Zeno's advice and live in agreement with nature, then we have a chance of safeguarding the health and well-being of the region's people. After all, as Zeno said, life is good when it is in harmony with nature. Here today, we have a real chance to secure the good life for the region's people. Let us seize it. Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε θερμά την κυρία Λέιτσον Κον για την εμπνευσμένη της τοποθέτηση και καλώ τώρα με ενθουσιασμό την τελευταία ομιλήτρια για την εναρκτήρια διαδικασία, την φίλη έμπνευσή μου και πρέσβυρα οδικής ασφάλειας, κυρία Ραφαέλα Μιλτιάδους, για να απευθύνει τον χαιρετισμό της εκ μέρους των νέων της Κύπρου.
Καλή σας μέρα και καλώς ορίσατε στην Κύπρο μας.
Good morning and welcome to Cyprus. I am a young woman of Cyprus, a young woman of Europe, a young woman of the world. My name is Rafaela Miltiadous, and a road accident 3 years ago changed my life and forced me to use the wheelchair because of total paraplegia on the lower limbs. In a single moment, everything changed, everything overturned, and everything that we had taken for granted became non-reachable for us. So I now see the world from a different point of view, with more awareness, more sensitivity, and I pay attention to what is truly important. Our planet is one of those things. Our planet, the planet that we received from our grandparents, is not a given, should not be taken as granted. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, what we considered as a given fact up until today is something that we might lose, and we might lose it forever. The consumption of resources and the burdening of the environment leads us with mathematical accuracy to the devastation of the planet. I'm not an environmental specialist, but I am a citizen. And yes, I experience climate change just like we all do. Recently, I was trying to explain to my goddaughter the 4 seasons through the pages of a fairy tale. And then I realized that the 4 seasons only exist on paper, and they did live happily ever after. But I don't know about us, so the changes are evident in our daily lives. Without, being particularly an expert on environmental issues, we can all understand the obvious risk, the obvious danger. What is left is to undertake our personal responsibility. If each and every one of us believed what the great author of Greece said, Mr. Kazantzakis, I myself have the responsibility alone to save the earth, then we would be able to turn this I into we and achieve the impossible. So let us become the solution to the problem. We all have a share of the responsibility for the salvation of our home, of our planet, so long as each and every one of us understands that this is our last chance. Yes, I know we are humans, we forget, we postpone, and we ignore the consequences that we will find in front of us in the depth of time. But this is your turn. Here you are. Show us the way, lead us, inspire us, and make us understand what an obligation we have, because our objective, our goal, and your goal should be life. Our goal should be health. Our goal should be joy, because everything is in vain if you don't have the basics. It is imperative to move more decisively and more bravely, all of us. Yes, I understand there will be a cost, and of course there will be resistance, because there are opportunists and interests. But the cost is something that we are going to share, all of us, mutatis mutandis. The responsibility that you hold is to set the framework, the regulations, the rules, so that this cost is also shared wisely and sustainably. And then you need to monitor the implementation of the rules, the regulations, and the policies, and make sure that the result will be capable of reversing the course we are now on. I know it's not easy, it's time consuming and painful, and we all need to be dedicated and stubborn. We have no other choice. There's no more time. Reacting immediately to what is happening now is a one-way street. It's in our hands to change the situation and to deliver a better planet to future generations. It is our duty and our debt. Thank you. I'm so very happy to be here today. I have this huge opportunity to express my concerns and my perspective. At the same time, I feel that for the last 4 or 5 minutes, I'm trying to convince you to see the essence of life, to see it through my eyes, and to feel gratitude and respect towards our home. Truly, let us stop taking it as granted. Let us reduce our selfishness. Let us look at the situation more simply. It is simpler. We've lost the meaning, and we're not going to have many chances from now on. My name is Rafaela Miltiadous, and in the last 3 years, I have been unable to walk, but I roll. And if I were given the chance to take my old life back for one day, I would run without protesting that I'm tired. I would jump up and down, and I would laugh loudly. I would dance endlessly on my highest heels, and I would enjoy dipping my feet in the sand. And the only thing I wish for is for one day not to need to say, if I had my planet once again, just like it used to be, I would. Thank you.
Η κυρία Ραφαέλα
Mrs. Rafaela Miltiadous is a bright example of the bright perspective and prospect that Cyprus and the world have. I proudly stand next to her and all the young people on the planet who have set as a priority the struggle for a more accessible, more responsible, and more fair planet for all. To conclude this opening ceremony, we're going to watch two films. The first is a cooperation between the Pedagogical Institute of Cyprus and primary education schools from all over Cyprus within the framework of environmental education. They are on the topic of the SDGs, the 2030 SDGs, as an invitation for awareness and alertness regarding the level of action that needs to be taken. The second part are trailers of films from all over the world on the topic of the environment that will also be shown to the public on Saturday here at Philoxenia.
If the temperature continues moving up, eventually most of the farmers won't succeed.
If this keep happening, I will not be able to have a cup of coffee a day.
Hii hali inasumbua.
Eso es un problema, afecta las hojas y afecta los granos.
People may suffer, so something needs to be done.
Sasa pale tunaweka migomba hii inafunika mti ambao hauwezi kupata jua lile la moja kwa moja.
Coffee, forest, food, community.
It all go together.
Agriculture should follow the rules of the natural context. Santa Anita is the first carbon neutral farm in the world.
We are empowering women to deal with climate change.
I'm very positive that you're going to make a change.
In some ways, nature calls our attention. I'm not sure if the consumers really understand that it's about protecting all of us.
In coffee, prices are very competitive.
We are trying to adapt. Now, who pays for that?
Πρόεδρος της Βουλής των Νέων Αντιπροσώπων.
Mr. Andreas Haralambous, former chair of the Youth Parliament of Cyprus. I thank you for your presence here and I welcome you to Cyprus. It is now my honor to give the floor to Her Excellency, the Speaker of the House of the Cyprus Parliament, Mrs. Annita Dimitriou, who is going to chair this panel. I give also the floor to the co-chairs, the Minister of Rural Development, Mr. Kostas Kadis, and the Minister of Education, Mr. Prodromos Prodromou, Mrs. Kalkayelva, Mrs. Sonia Layton-Kohn, and the head of the UNESI Environment Department and Secretary, Mr. Zan Longtante.
Until everybody will take their seats on the panel, allow me to welcome you, all of you in Cyprus. And I think after Rafaela's speech, we can understand that we do have an extra responsibility as parliamentarians, as ministers, as members of the diplomatic corps to act proactively. It is about time, Rafaela, point taken. And πρέπει να πούμε, and I will continue in Greek, that
Madam Executive Secretary of UNICEF, Executive Director of UNIP, Mrs. Sonia Layton, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner, parliamentarians, members of the diplomatic core, ladies and gentlemen, the climate change is not a distant, scary scenario. It is something that we experience every day, and we are now in the greatest existential crisis for the humanity. Climate crisis is all over us. The most extreme weather conditions happen daily all over the planet. We have witnessed the wildfires in the forests in most countries in the European North, and at the same time, the wildfires in the European South, and at the same time, we had the floods in the European North. The Mediterranean is already suffering from the climate crisis and constantly challenging gigantic obstacles. We have floods, wildfires, desertification. There's no other time to waste. We must now, today, at this very moment, act. We must cooperate. We must fight all together in order to overturn the situation and not to confirm the most pessimistic predictions. Multilateral cooperation is now more necessary than ever before. The Paris Agreement, the European Green Agreement are the compasses for a more sustainable planet, for a more sustainable future. At the same time, they are the roadmap in order to adopt multi-level approaches for the protection of the environment and sustainable development. This is what the ministerial conference is trying to achieve, and we are looking forward to the conclusions of this 9th of Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference, which is the first to be taking place in a Mediterranean country. And we do hope that the political discussions that will follow in the next few days will formulate a common strategy for the environment and for sustainable development. The environmental challenge that we are now facing is an equation of many factors that consequently demands a multilateral approach. The wager is to develop such an approach, especially now that humanity is facing the multi-level challenges of political conflict, of the migration crisis, of the environment crisis, the nightmare possibility of a nuclear holocaust, the creation of a holistic universal strategy within the framework of the UN SDGs is now more imperative than ever before. A horizontal strategy that will mobilize state, social partners, and will focus on the three strands, on the three pillars, as they've mentioned before. We are called upon to redefine the meaning of development, because sustainability is not a luxury but a requirement for the future of humanity. Sustainable development underpins what it lacks: equal and parallel development of the economy, of the environment, and the society. And this is what we're going to discuss in this session. Ladies and gentlemen, I will refer to something that was said by Nelson Mandela, which I think is timely. Education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. We hope that the Nicosia Ministerial Conference will lay the foundation to create environmental awareness among the young people, the role and presence of whom is truly very strong here today, but we need it to be stronger at all decision-making centers, in all fora. In all decisions that are made for them need to be made with them and not without them. We've reached a point where simply there is no room for experiments. Our children, their generation, will never forgive us unless we cooperate to overturn the current results that are faced by humanity and the planet. Starting today, I truly believe that we can rise to the occasion. The protection of the environment is a human fundamental right. and sustainable development is the absolute destination in this universal long journey for the survival of the humanity and the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, the best moment to plant a tree was perhaps 20 years ago. The second best moment is definitely now. So let us plant this seed today. Is the least we can do, the least we owe to the future generations. And I shall agree with Olga that we will win the wager. And I will also agree with Sonia that it's not too late. It is time. It is our responsibility. Thank you very much.
So, dear participants, certainly set the tone for the conference main objectives, which are to address a number of agreed issues under the two main themes of the conference: greening the economy in the pan-European region, working towards sustainable infrastructure, and applying principles of circular economy to sustainable tourism. To launch, secondly, the 4 cycles of ECE environmental performance reviews, and to adopt the ministerial declaration. Moreover, I would like to inform you that the third high-level meeting of Education and Environment Ministries is part of the conference and will take place this afternoon from 3 to 6 p.m. The segment will conclude with Ministers of Education and Environment being invited to adopt the Nicosia Ministerial Statement on Education for Sustainable Development. The high-level meeting for Ministers of Education for Sustainable Development will take place tomorrow from 9:30 to 2. The high-level event of Education and Environment Ministers on the Mediterranean Strategy on Education for Sustainable Development and its action plan towards 2030 will take place tomorrow from 3:30 to 7:30 p.m. Finally, I wish to inform you and the UNECE Committee on Environmental Policy finalized the draft ministerial declaration at its meeting yesterday. May I now invite the delegations to adopt the agenda of the conference as presented in document as given before. And now I have to see some hands as they wrote me on the script. Yes? Yes, please. No? No? So, I remind you all, as I don't see any hands, that the conference aims to be a paperless event and therefore documents and materials were made available on the website. And next time I need to have my tablet and not paper in front of me. I strongly encourage all delegates to constructively participate in the discussions, and I hope to have an efficient and successful conference. And this brings us to the closing of this agenda item. Πάμε στο επόμενο. Ελπίζω να με... Okay, we move now to agenda item 2, which is entitled From Dobris to Nicosia, 30 years of environmental cooperation in the pan-European region. I invite the delegations to refer to the final review report on the establishment of the shared environmental information system as presented in the document. And I invite Mrs. Sylvie Motard, and I hope I'm pronounced that correctly, Acting Director of the UNEP Europe Office, to moderate the discussion on the establishment of a pan-European shared environmental information system and take her seat on the panel. Thank you. And I also invite Mr. Luc Bass of the European Environment Agency Welcome. And Mrs. Maya Yavakishvili of Georgia to join the panel. And I pass now to the floor to Sylvie. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and you pronounce my name perfectly well, so thank you for that. So it is my pleasure to introduce the speakers of this session today. Ms. Maya Yavakishvili, Commission for Europe Working Group on Environmental Monitoring and Assessment, and Mr. Luc Bass, sitting beside me, the Head of Coordination, Networks and Strategy Program of the European Environment Agency. Our three organizations are working for many years together on this endeavor, and we basically passed the last decade to inform environmental policy making. So I would invite Ms. Maya, without any further ado, to present the initial findings, who would inform the discussions. Maya, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, there is a long-standing demand from the environmental community for reliable and comparable data and information in support of environmental assessments and reporting. Over the past decade, there has also been a significant increase in efforts to improve environmental data sharing and practices. One such initiative is the Shared Environmental Information System, or SEIS, begun by the European Commission in 2008, and which you then decided to establish in Europe and Central Asia at your conference in Astana in 2011. At your conference in Batumi in 2016, you then invited countries continue their efforts to have SEIS in place by 2021. This was the target set for countries. But what it says? SEIS is a mean to improve the management, exchange, and use of environmental data and information. It's based on three pillars. SEIS is based on three pillars. The cooperation pillar on building partnership between data providers and users. The contact pillar on generating policy relevant and comparable information. And third one is the infrastructure pillar on the use of shared and modern information and communication technologies. SEIS is also a set of principles such as that information should be collected once, shared with others for many purposes, and easily accessible for all users, to all users and stakeholders. So where are we now? The final review report on the establishment of shared environmental information system presented the status of the flows of 21 representative data series covering 9 environmental themes on their path from monitoring to indicator reporting. The report revealed that 85% of data flows are published regularly. 72% are readily available and accessible online for users on national platforms. 67% are used to produce different types of content, such as reports and graphics. 71% have metadata available, and 67% have institutional arrangements in place for regular production and sharing of data between the institutions. Another great achievement is that 80% of data flows are used for more than one purpose. Based on the final review report, and as the chair of the UNECE Working Group on Environmental Monitoring and Assessment, it's my great pleasure to inform you that overall the shared environmental information system has been successfully established in Europe and Central Asia through the joint efforts of countries, international organizations, and civil society. All member states have, to varying degrees, made progress regarding the establishment of a national system over the past decade, and in making environmental information available and accessible. National systems vary in form and regularity regarding their updates and context, and gaps also remain, and these need to be addressed. It should be also highlighted that countries still need to improve institutional cooperation between fragmented data producers producers and the users. The final progress review encourages such interactions also. The Pan-European environmental assessment also showed that challenges remain in some sectors and in measuring progress towards policy targets, including for emerging themes such as circular economy and sustainable infrastructure. Also, further reviews of size implementation would help to address remaining gaps. I therefore wish all countries further success in implementing SAIS, and to ensure open data for better decision making and for informing citizens. And I trust that the strong partnership of UNECE, of UNEP and the European Environment Agency and donor engagement will continue to support countries in the Pan-European region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maya, for presenting the main achievements in the past decade. That's quite impressive indeed. So looking ahead, I would turn to Mr. Bas in providing some future direction based on our experience.
Thank you, Sylvie. Madam Chair, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity to share a bit of a historic path on these assessments where the European Environment Agency has been very closely involved in cooperating with the partners in the pan-European context since its early beginnings almost 30 years ago now. When looking back on that journey from this iconic Dobres assessment published back in 1995, this was the first State of Environment report for the whole of the pan-European region. There's three elements that are really key to emphasize here. You needed a consistent baseline and an assessment of the region as a whole. The identification of a list of some concrete actions to be implemented across the region. And then finally, of course, an evaluation of Europe's place, role, and the impact on the global context. Upon request from the region, the EEA systematically built on this cooperative baseline by leading 5 of these pan-European assessments. And they were presented at each of these environmental minister conferences in the region. 95, 2003, 7, 12, and 16. Increasingly, this process was linked with the 5-yearly state and outlook report that the agency produces in line with its regulation for the EEA countries, and globally, of course, with the regular UNEP GAO process. As already mentioned earlier, over the years, our joint work with the countries across the EU, the EEA, and the pan-European region covered a wide area of activities from production to dissemination of environmental data and information to building strong networks and partnerships. And I think that partnership is crucial. Throughout the past decades, the EEA has systematically carried out many of these activities with the countries in its EEA network. It's a European Environment Information and Observation Network that includes the EU member states, plus countries that are cooperating and partners, in order to develop and improve this appropriate data ecosystem, to have a real context in which this can happen. This work expanded gradually to other countries in the pan-European region, while having close synergies to be ensured with various international partners, and of course, specifically with UNECE and with UNEP. All this work has been contributing to the implementation of the Aarhus Convention, important to emphasize, and the reporting obligations of the countries in the pan-European region. Over the past 30 years, the political framework at the EU and the global levels have, of course, dramatically changed, and the technological drivers experienced unprecedented development. So for the future, and this is in the slide, the next slide, this is the second and last slide I wanted to share with you. The EU has, supported by the EEA, very ambitious objectives, of course, in its European Green Deal, as well as for the European Digital Agenda. And these two are very much connected, and we call them actually the green and the digital twins. The global data revolution, defined by a growing volume and diversity of data, is also pushing and technologies, the big data and artificial intelligence, of course. This is supported by a modernized IT infrastructure, managed and shared environmental information in an open and accessible manner. A good example here is the European Copernicus program, and the in situ component that is managed and coordinated by the EEA, in which we make use of improved data availability and free and open information services. In this context, the EEA and its network and the IONETs have a new strategy or a recently adopted strategy for 2030. And one of these strategic objectives of this strategy is clearly referring to making full use of the potential data, technology, and the digitalization. Again, a reconfirmation of the implementation of the SICE principles that were mentioned earlier, the Shared Environmental Information System. And we were executing this together with many of you here and many of the partners for many years. I want to use this opportunity to thank you all for your participation, commitment, and enthusiasm and trust in these different assessments. We also contributed to the last one. We were not in the lead in this one, but we contributed there. And we see that this is just going on a straightforward and uphill, but in a good direction. So congratulations to us all, I would say, for the good results that we achieved in this long journey. And from Nicosia today and looking ahead, we remain committed in continuing this cooperation in support of better information, better decision-making, and enhanced partnership, and to address the big challenge that we're all facing in a holistic and also in a truly sustainable manner. If you want to know more about this and in more detail, I kindly invite you to join the colleagues from the Environment Agency in Austria, UNECE, UNEP, at our joint signed event that is focusing on sustainable monitoring of infrastructure, continuous innovation, and implementing a shared environmental information system. It's today, a bit during lunchtime, depending where you come. Lunchtime is either earlier or later, but it's at 1 p.m. in the Kernea room here in the Congress Center. So I welcome you if you're curious to know more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya. Thank you, Bas. We know that we have the tools and we have a methodology for informed decision-making. Just make good use of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So much, Mrs. Motard, as well as our two speakers, Mr. Luc Bas and Mrs. Maya Yavakishvili, for their informative contributions. And now we proceed to the celebratory part, as we call it, revisiting the previous Europe ministerial conferences. And I would like to start with Mrs. Hubáčková, the Minister of the Environment of the Czech Republic, will have been our first speaker, but unfortunately yesterday she had to cancel her participation. However, her keynote address was recorded. May I invite our Secretariat to play this pre-recorded video, please?
Dear Ms. Chairwoman, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the government of Cyprus for hosting this ministerial conference so generously in the beautiful Nicosia. And I feel very sad that due to unaccepted circumstances, I cannot be there with all of you in person. Luckily, thanks to virtual technologies, I can address you from Prague. This conference marks the 30th anniversary of the Environment for Europe process that was funded in Dobříš, Czechoslovakia. It was 1991, 2 years after the Velvet Revolution that toppled the communist regime for which environmental protection was almost a swear word. This approach manifests itself in disastrous quality of air, water, and soil, and was in stark contrast to what we are seeing today when we are not afraid to act. The Dobříš conference was organized in time of abrupt geopolitical changes, with the divide between the West and East shrinking. The main person behind the idea of the Dobříš conference, the first environmental minister, Mr. Vavroušek, was a person of this time, energetic, optimistic, and with a zeal for bringing the two worlds of West and East together. His vision had three main components: institutional, programmatic, and ethical. Under the institutional pillar, a Council of European Environmental Ministers was to be established with environmental program of work introducing issues like monitoring, legislation, and research and education. The third pillar stemmed from Vavroušek conventions that there is an urgent need to seek human values for the harmony between humankind and nature. As I said, Mr. Vavroušek's ambitions were high, and his vision and the importance of the conference was confirmed by the participation of the then President of Czechoslovakia, Václav Havel, whose motto was Europe as a task. It is no coincidence that the current Czech presidency has the same motto. And so, Dobříž conference was a success, considering the circumstance of the era and the conditions under which it was organized. It has brought 30 years of close cooperation in the area of environment, with results spanning from initiatives and strategies to assessments and binding agreements. It has always been a specific process, heavily stakeholder-oriented, with flexibility to evolve as a consequence of major regional and global developments. This flexibility is partly a result of the reform adopted in 2009 that specified how the Environment for Europe process should evolve. I am proud that my country continues to be involved in this process, not only as the country of the origin of the process, but also as an active player. My colleagues have helped negotiation the 2009 reform and continue to play a role in pushing the Environment for Europe process forward. We have moved from essential sectoral tools, be it on air, water, public participation, or environmental impact, to topics that cross sectoral boundaries. I see the fact that we have dared into this uncharted territory of sustainability in tourism and infrastructure as a sign of renewed vitality of the process and a step that could induce more dynamics into how some hotels or some building companies operate. Let's open a new chapter of our cooperation here in Nicosia, Cyprus. Thank you.
Indeed, let's open a new chapter of cooperation. Let's keep that. And I now invite Mrs. Selina from the European Eco Forum to join us on stage and deliver her keynote address. Selina? Where is she? You may use the podium. Thank you.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. And first of all, distinguished Mrs. Olga Alkhairova, distinguished excellencies, and all the guests who are here, and of course, my environmental NGO community colleagues. I feel a little bit unease when I'm standing here because I feel the same as I felt in 1991, where I was the first environmental NGO speaker at the conference in Dobříž. So we are not talking about the ages, but we are talking simply about the process. And I happen to be at the cradle of the birth of this important process. And even more, I had the chance to speak in the opening panel after Václav Havel, the President of Republic of Czechoslovakia, those days, sorry. And of course, the famous Minister of Environment in Czechoslovakia, Josef Vavrosek. And that has left the deep past in my life and also in my head. So I always will remember that. And I think I want to bring you a little bit back on how this all started. So be with me for a while. And now I'm standing here and I have been in the process, and then I compare how was it in Dobřiš. We were meeting with environmental community 25 kilometers off the meeting place itself. And I was brought just for the presentation into the meeting room. So I didn't have any possibility to communicate with people, to know where I am and what I'm doing. So it was a bit strange.
You may continue.
A very strange feeling, but I did. So, and now I'm standing here and I feel like a part of all this. So I call my presentation, as you saw, from vision to action, because I think this is something what was still a vision in 91, and it starts to be an action now. And here you see a nice photo. First of all, this beautiful room in Dobřiš Castle, and Josef Vavrosek sitting at the table of the panel after his presentation. And my next slide, it's just first NGO declaration what we have produced. It was not even on the computer, so I had to retype it in order to show also to the UNEC before this meeting what I'm going to talk about. So we already heard today the word working together. And this was a name of our conference when we were, the next slide please, when we were discussing what future would mean for environmental NGOs, which actually have started to be born and raised up in the East and Central Europe. I myself come from Latvia, from the country at the Baltics, which was not even part officially for the Environment for Europe process. So that was very important. So, and now I want to bring a little bit of ideas what we had back in the 1991. And I think many of those things, there are many actions taken, but many of those things are still very, very valid today. And I think what I would stress is that at that time we were highly concerned about the present euphoria of in Europe about the promotion of economic growth through economic integration, and it was not so environmentally friendly. So I think this is what we were also concerned in those times as civil society. In spite of the rhetoric about integration of environment into the sectoral policies, measures are taken, different measures are taken every day, but it doesn't really make much of the difference. So that was one of the points what we have been discussing at that time. Then we also stressed that there is a conflict between European economic integration and environmental protection. And especially that was important for the countries from East and Central Europe, where we had a lot of untouched, beautiful nature. Next slide, please. We also reminded the ministers at that time that Europe bears primary responsibility for a global environment and should demonstrate a real concern to the international community by moving beyond the mere statements of good intent. I think many of us can also reflect that today, because there are many nice documents, but they stay on a paper. So think about it when you discuss today the issues. It's a high time for real commitment to be made to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions, and to recognize that there is a limit to use the fossil fuels. Again, some actions are taken, but that's not enough. The forests, rivers, seas, oceans in Europe are still facing permanent damage, and the governments of both East and West have to fail to find reliable, suitable solutions. Next slide, please. Cooperation among all European countries is urgently needed. That was said that time. This should be organized in institutions where all countries have an equal footing. I think the first idea was to do something under the umbrella of Council of Europe, but I think now we have a good platform of under the UNEC, one that we can all cooperate with really on equal footing, including civil society. Access to information and decision making for the public and NGOs must be ensured at international level. This, of course, is partially solved with Aarhus Convention. However, these days, this becomes again very, very important because environmental activists, defenders of environment, are often harassed and they are not protected anymore. So the situation goes a bit down. European countries should move to the non-waste economy by implementing clean procedure policies. A first step in this direction, of course, would be to stop export to the non-EC countries. I think this is also an issue where countries have to think about what to do. Maybe not so much on hazardous waste, but also on the general waste. Next slide, please. Energy is a key issue to the whole development. A national energy policy is only way to implement an ecological and socially oriented economy. The energy charter should be based on promote of energy efficient revolution. So that was our idea at that time. The need for moratorium to nuclear power was on the agenda as well. And now we see we had a good development with also starting to close down nuclear reactors, but now we see reverse process and we already are talking that nuclear energy is labeled as a green energy. Contemporary interpretation of civilization, and I think that point is very much from what Mr. Wawrzyk was thinking. Contemporary interpretation of civilization has generally only given value to nature where it contributes to human production and pleasure. But nature has its own value, so we have to give a great value to the nature, and I was very happy today to hear that this is really important, that to live in harmony with nature. And one of the important points also at that time was that education systems must fundamentally change to ensure that the next generation is environmentally aware so that the decisions taken are also with a future look. And I want to, that was the last sentence in our old declaration from 91, that we hope that the ministers will adopt the documents which will be really commitments with strong focus on implementation. And I want to finish my presentation reflecting to what Mrs. Alquero said in the high-level briefing, that if the vision without the action is a dream. So I want to let you have a vision, but start acting. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the remarks, and your points are taken. May I now give the floor to Mr. Juraj Smatana, State Secretary of the Ministry of Environment of the Slovak Republic, to make an intervention as the first Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference was held in Dobříš, Czechoslovakia.
Dear Madam Executive Secretary, the Chair, dear ladies and distinguished gentlemen, I'd like to begin by thanking the government of Cyprus for undertaking to organize this ministerial conference and for giving us the opportunity to discuss the subject of environmental protection once again. Bloody war in Ukraine caused by Russian aggression is unprecedented. We must join all of our forces to conclude this aggression, to help the Ukrainians not only to defend themselves, but to recover from devastation of the environment, returning life to Ukraine. It's very important now to start thinking about renewal of the devastated environment due to the war atrocities, and also think about strengthening the ability of international community to reduce future motivations of any aggressors by enforcing responsibility from environmental damage caused by them. Biodiversity loss and degradation of the environment in Europe is not only caused by war conflict, its origin is elsewhere and it has begun much earlier. Despite the effort of the European Union and the international community, biodiversity loss, ecosystem degradation is progressing, causing damage to economy and the climate. Therefore, Slovakia views positively the European Commission initiative, which in June presented a proposal for regulation setting targets and measures for restoration of European ecosystems. Healthy ecosystems provide not only food and food security, clean water, carbon sinks, and protection against natural disasters caused by climate change. They are essential for our long-term survival, well-being, prosperity, security, as they are the basis of Europe's resilience physically. With regard to sustainability, we are still struggling with the cross-cutting nature of this issue, and we are not able to grasp it globally in a way that links all three pillars of the 2030 agenda. In an ever-enlarging Europe, there is a lot of talk about values, but more and more compromise, superficial attitudes, and pragmatic interest prevail. Today, the environmentalists no longer have to be convincing the public about the existence of problems in the environment. Every citizen can feel them on their own skin, literally. Today, the environmentalists must remind on presented false solutions and the so-called environmental Potemkin villages and greenwashing in this field. This year, we are reminding ourselves the 30th anniversary of the Environment for Europe process beginning. It's a good time to take stock. What has been accomplished over this time from the main thesis of the Dobříš Declaration? This conference prompted the creation of the European Environmental Agency, which has a truly pan-European reach, has brought new monitoring mechanisms, functioning European information and monitoring system was established, due to which regular publications are made in environmental assessment for pan-European region. With regard to conclusions from the Dobříš meeting, speak of the results. The results here are quite ambiguous. European nature continues to deteriorate, and particularly to the east of the former Iron Curtain, especially after the automobile boom, not always well thought out construction of motorways, hydroelectric dams, extraction of raw materials, unregulated construction, and commercial tourism has been causing damage. Here, the UNECE is to be thanked for its intensive work in supporting programs, strategies, protocols, and initiatives to promote improvement and protection of the environment. Allow me to conclude my speech on a more optimistic note. Since Dobříš in the 90s, there have been already multiple conferences. Each of them had its strengths and weaknesses, but they all brought something new, something that gives new contours to the new rules and the new rules to Europe's environmental care system. So I hope that this 9th ministerial conference will also be a success and will take environment protection and development forward. Thank you for your attention.
So that too, Mr. Smetana, thank you so much for your intervention. Mr. Smetana is in the middle row, if you all want to see him, because I was trying to locate you in the beginning. Thank you so much for your statement. The second Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference was held in 1993 in Lucerne, Switzerland. Therefore, I invite Mrs. Catherine Schnitzberger, State Secretary for the Environment of Switzerland, to make an intervention. You may proceed to the podium, please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen,
You prefer your
Switzerland
seat?
has been
Where is
strong-
Switzerland? Let me see you. There you are. Hello, Switzerland. Okay, you may proceed. Thank you.
Switzerland has been a strong supporter of the Environment for Europe process since its beginning. In 1993, we hosted the second ministerial conference in Lucerne, which proved to be an important milestone in this 30 years history. The Lucerne Conference endorsed the elements for a long-term environmental program for Europe, identifying policies for common high standards. Let me name three of them, which are now established programs or legal instruments. Firstly, the national environmental performance reviews, which are considered as flagship reports within the UNEC and beyond. Secondly, the pan-European assessment reports, the seventh of which is being submitted to the Nicosia Ministerial Conference. These reports provide a regular account of the state of the environment in the pan-European region. They have informed the ministers' discussions since 1995. Progress in the availability and accessibility of environmental information has made it possible. Therefore, Switzerland welcomes the overall successful establishment of a shared environmental information system in order to keep the pan-European environment under review. Thirdly, the public participation is also one of these elements endorsed in Lucerne. For instance, the Aarhus Convention has been adopted since then. The implementation of the Espoo Convention is also to be mentioned in this regard. In addition, the Lucerne Conference endorsed the Environmental Action Programme for Central and Eastern Europe, which progressively evolved to include the Caucasus and Central Asia countries. Switzerland would like to share its warmest congratulations for the 30th anniversary of the Environment for Europe process. We wish the process to continue providing the high-level guidance to the pan-European countries and stimulate multi-stakeholders' actions in the region. Long live Environment for Europe. Thank you very much.
Long live Environment Europe. Thank you so much, Switzerland, for the excellent remarks. I also invite Mr. Jürgen Keinhorst. You will excuse me if I don't pronounce that correctly, the co-chair of the Green Action Task Force from Germany, for his intervention. Germany.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Where are you? There you are. Hello, Germany. Hello, Mr. Jürgen Keinhorst. Is that correct?
Perfect.
I'm start learning German. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairwoman, Excellencies, Ministers, colleagues. It's an honor for me to address you in my capacity as a co-chair of the Green Action Task Force, which is one of the key pillars of the Environment for Europe process, and also representing here the OECD, who is hosting the secretariat of the task force from its beginning. Since the second ministerial conference in Lucerne in 1993, the Green Action Task Force, for those longer in the process, more known under the ERP Task Force, has been a unique cooperation platform for OECD countries, development cooperation partners, and the countries of Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, and Central Asia, to develop and implement policies that improve environmental quality and social well-being while creating opportunities for strong economic growth and decent jobs in the region. There are not too many examples, if at all, of such an intensive and continued cooperation in the region over decades. At the 8th Environment for Europe conference in Batumi in 2016, the environment ministers invited the Green Action Task Force to continue its work. Since then, I am proud to report that the task force generated a large number of very tangible results on the ground. These included the development of ambitious environmental and green economy strategies and policies, and the modernization of regulatory and economic instruments for more efficient and effective environmental management. The task force also helped to build capacities of institutions in the region and for reducing environmental risks and mobilizing finance for green investment. Time does not allow to list all the achievements. Instead, I will invite you to consult a report, Greening the Economies in the ICA region, which stands for Eastern Europe and Central Asia and the Caucasus, prepared for this conference by the OECD, which presents several examples of the concrete outputs and impacts of the task force work. But there are 2 points I wish to highlight from the task force work since the Batumi conference. First, the representatives of the ministries of economy, as well as other ministries such as finance, agriculture, infrastructure, energy, have been much more systematically engaged in the task force work. This has contributed to mainstream environmental consideration into the fiscal, energy, transport, and agricultural policies. Second, a number of activities have been carried out in cooperation with development finance institutions with a common aim to promote the enabling framework for green and low carbon investment. These included work on evaluating investment needs, reform of domestic financial systems and institutions, mobilizing capital markets and leveraging public and international support for green investments. We achieved already a lot, but further reform steps are still necessary. It is important that a renewed mandate for the task force reflects the needs and priorities of the ICA countries. The task force would very much appreciate if this conference could provide further guidance in this regard. The side event organized by OECD this afternoon is intended to provide a respective forum for this. A more diversified support to specific subregions as the Caucasus, as Central Asia, and maybe also in the future in the Mediterranean, as well as addressing the nexus between climate, energy, water, land use could be options for these activities. Apart from the reform agenda, since 2020, we are facing challenges which have never been expected on the agenda in Batumi. First, the COVID-19 pandemic shifted priorities to respond to pressing needs in struggling economies and in the health sector. With its emergency response package, the task force, mainly the OECD Secretariat, together with other organizations, supported the ministries of environment in the region to provide proposals for the respective recovery programs of the ICA countries. Second, the war in Ukraine is a tragedy for millions of people in Ukraine, for many in the neighborhood and far abroad. It destroys what was built up over decades, and it also makes it more difficult to achieve the SDGs for 2030 and the climate goals. This means for the countries in the region, as an intensified cooperation could be the key to reduce the cost of the necessary transformation process and to improve the financing conditions and the access to capital. It could also contribute to improve the resiliency of our economies. And we will have to do a lot to tackle and make it possible that the investments needed will be done in this region as well. And this might be the main challenge for the upcoming decade. The task force and its partners stand ready to further support the ECA countries and other countries here in the region with their experience and networks to contribute to net zero and the green economic development. Thank you.
Dankeschön. Thank you so much, Mr. Kinehorst. The points taken into consideration, especially about the guidance that this conference can provide for decisions and policies in the future. And may now proceed to the Mrs. Rosita Karamfilova-Blakova. Is the third Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference took place in Sofia, Bulgaria in 1995. And of course, it gives me more than a pleasure to invite Mrs. Rosita Karamfilova-Blakova, Minister of Environment and Water of Bulgaria, to make an intervention.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all agree that quite often environment challenges respect no human boundaries.
I think you have to
and
be
spare
closer
no
to the
country
mic.
or
Please be
region.
closer, Your Excellency, to the mic so we can listen to you louder and clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will repeat.
Yes.
I think we can all agree that quite often environment challenges respect no human boundaries and spare no country or region. Yet nowadays we can still clearly see the negative consequences of the lack of strong and sustainable global environmental policy over the past centuries. Nonetheless, I'm hopeful that we are on the right track toward the much needed adequate transnational response, which is resiliently growing. A strong push in that respect was given more than 30 years ago in 1991 in Dobrich, where visionaries from 6-3 delegation paved the way to the better pan-European collaboration on environment matter during the first Ministerial Conference Environment for Europe. In 1995, on the third Ministerial Conference in Sofia, Bulgaria, the ministers underlined one fundamental principle: the need for integration of the environment consideration in all sectoral policies, so that economic growth takes place in accordance with the principle of sustainable development. I'm happy to say today that these principles is gaining more and more ground, and we can see it now in the core of the present European policy. This is a great success, but we should not stop our work in this forum, as they are an existential threat to humanity, ecosystem, and biodiversity still to be resolved. We need to continue this legacy and enhance over more our efforts and cooperation all together, so that we can ensure a future where all environment challenges are addressed properly and the economic growth is sustainable, fair, and green. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We need to continue this legacy and cooperation. You're absolutely right. Thank you for your remarks. The fourth Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference was held in 1998 in Aarhus, Denmark. Thus, I invite now Mrs. Daiva Valiskaitė Matusevičiūtė, Vice Minister of Environment of Lithuania, on behalf of the Bureau of Aarhus Convention, to make her intervention. There you are. In the middle, yes, please.
Thank you. Dear ministers, dear delegates, colleagues, there are no doubts that we all depend on the environment in which we live. Safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is an important part for the full enjoyment of a wide range of human rights, including the rights to life, health, food, water, and sanitation. The adoption of Aarhus Convention, the Convention on Access to Information, Public Participation in Decision-Making, and Access to Justice in Environmental Matters, in the fourth conference, Environment for Europe, was a major step forward. For the first time, the interlinked rights of access to information, public participation, and access to justice were addressed in a single international treaty. Aarhus Convention links environment rights and human rights, government accountability, and environment protection. It acknowledges that we owe an obligation to future generations and establishes that sustainable development can be achieved only through the involvement of all stakeholders. It focuses on interactions between the public and public authorities in a democratic context. It also requires to ensure protection of environmental defenders. That is especially relevant now when Russia's war in Ukraine has struck a direct blow to people's life and the environment, undermining the values of United Nations. Sustainable development is only possible in politically free societies. Lithuania is proud to provide a chairmanship for this remarkable treaty and is committed to promote environmental rights in the region and beyond. Since its adoption under the Aarhus Convention, a lot of important achievements has been made in promoting environmental democracy at local, national, and regional level. Laws and practices have been improved. Allow me to take this opportunity to remind all of us that the Aarhus Convention is open for accession by any United Nations member state. I would like to take this chance to call all states who did not yet do so to join the convention and benefit from its solid framework and achievements. Thank you. Evcharisto.
Παρακαλώ. Thank you so much. I now invite Mr. Ruslan Shrilets, the Minister of Environment, Protection and Natural Resources of Ukraine, for his intervention. Since the 5th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference was hosted in Kiev, Ukraine in 2003. Dear Minister, where are you? There you are. You will allow me, before you to proceed to your intervention, to announce, state and clearly once more that we will continue to support your country and the people of Ukraine against this brutality. We will continue to serve democracy and we will continue to fight with you in solidarity because it is the protection of our norms and principles. And I think it's our duty, and you will allow me to exit the agenda or the script and serve 1 minute silent for other people that lost their life or they continue to lose their life every day because of this brutality and this invasion. So please stand up, everybody, 1 minute to give silence and return later on to our program. Thank you. May them rest in peace. And believe me, dear Minister, we really appreciate the fact that you are present here in Cyprus. And as Cyprus, you will allow me one personal statement. We can understand exactly what it means, an invasion and an ongoing occupation for 48 years now. So please proceed to your intervention, and thank you once more for being here present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very appreciated to be here today and to communicate not only about environmental protection, not only about climate change, but about the war. Your Excellencies, dear participations, the year of 1991, humanity chose a new path of development. The first ever Pan-European Conference for Environmental Protection Ministers of European countries is taking place. After the fall of the Iron Curtain, we breathed the sigh of relief and moved toward the balance between man and nature. The year of 1991 again. The independent Ukraine state is being restored to the map of the Europe. With its rich natural resources, Ukraine joined the rest of the world in solving problems for a planetary scale. On May 23, 2003, the Environment for Europe conference concluded in Ukraine. 3 protocols to Convention of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe were adopted and opened for signature. Protocol for pollutant release and transfer registers, protocol on strategic environmental assessment, protocol on civil liability and compensation for damage caused by the transboundary effect for industrial accident on transboundary waters. At the same time, the Convention on the Protection and Sustainable Development of the Carpathian was adopted by the government of the 7 countries of the Carpathian region. Representatives of our government went home to introduce new principles of environmental protection. Independent Ukraine continued to keep pace with Europe. What was on the agenda of Ukraine's Ministry of Environmental Protection on this day, exactly 19 years later? In 2022, on May 23, I spoke at the meeting of the 30th Economic and Environmental Forum of the OSCE. I talked about the nuclear threat to all of Europe due to Russian military aggression, missile strikes on Ukrainian oil depots and chemical plants, and the total destruction of ecosystem. These are the issues Ukraine's Ministry of Environmental Protection has been forced to deal with for more than 7 months. If Russia had not started a war against the civilized world, the world would have developed completely differently. Russia attacked Ukraine, breaking all the rules cruelly at night. Do you know why they attacked? Because Ukraine chose to develop together with the Europe. We decided to join the EU. For us, this is another step in our development, but Russia sees it is a reason for nuclear terror and missile attacks. Our road is littered with missiles and mines. Russia has already launched 2,500 missiles at Ukraine. This is 35 times more than during the 10 years of war in Syria. The territory contaminated with mines in Ukraine is comparable to the total area of Austria and Czech Republic combined. Russia burned almost 50 oil depots in Ukraine. These are 50 full-fledged environmental disasters. Russian Iskander's missiles hit Kharkiv according to the schedule 6-7 strikes every day between 11 p.m. or at midnight. All of this affects the air, soil, our drinking water, forest, and water resources. You have seen the photos of Mariupol. You know what happened in Bucha and Irpin. Some of my European colleagues had the courage to visit Ukraine to see everything with their own eyes. We saved Kyiv, but our forests took a colossal blow. Our ecosystem have been destroyed by trenches, fires, and ammunition. Today, about 2,500 square kilometers of forest are under occupation. Imagine that the Russians invaded the Netherlands or Moldova and occupied all the forest of these countries. About 30,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian forest have been affected by war. For comparison, this is more than the area of the forest of Latvia, Great Britain, and Georgia. Our seas have been taken away from us. For comparison, the sea coastline of our host country, Cyprus, is 648 kilometers long. Ukraine doesn't have access to 1,048 kilometer sea coastline. Imagine, this is the scale of 1.5 island of Cyprus. This is what we are already experiencing. At the same time, we don't know what the Russia did to our Crimea. during all 8 years of its occupation. Russia is trying to multiply by 0 all the achievement of the civilized world over the past 30 years. Russia is trying to show that our 30 years efforts are worthless. But we have already accomplished so much and will not let the invaders destroy our legacy. Ukraine's armed forces are successfully fighting the Russian enemy on the front line as long as the front line of World War II. They defend not only Ukrainian independence, but they also the well-being of all of Europe. We have already achieved a lot. Ukraine is a candidate for EU membership. Ukraine is a party of more than 40 multilateral environmental agreements. Not for a single day. We have given fulfilling our obligation under the Aarhus Convention, the Sea Protocol, the Berne Convention, the Water Convention, and the ESPO Convention. In particular, law on environmental impact assessment are strategic environmental assessment, which are being advocated today, came into the force of Ukraine in 2017. We stick to these laws in time of war. With air raid sirens on, we continue to adopt laws in accordance with EU directives. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, we have passed dozens of European integration laws. It is significant that while being in the largest army conflict in the world, Ukraine elaborate from stretch and adopt the law on the pollutant release and transfer registers. We continue to move to the Green Deal course. Nature has no border. Everything that happens in Ukraine is happening in the center of Europe. And we have to join our efforts to protect the environment. Ukraine's Ministry of Environmental Protection monitors the environmental indicators every day and deploy new methodologies for assessment and environmental impact of military operations. According to preliminary data, as of now, the damage of environmental amount to at least 36 billion euros. Russia is trying to force us to go down to past the degradation. Not for a single day. We in Ukraine have agreed to this. Even taken into account that it will be much more difficult to achieve the goals we set before due to Russian aggression. When the whole world is talking about reduce greenhouse gas emission, we in Ukraine must talk about the fight against pollution. For example, in 2022, Ukraine's emission exceed the volume recorded in 2022 by 23 times. This is even through our industry is currently operation at level 25–30%. We can talk as much as we want about reparation, but as long as there is a war in the heart of Europe, our joint effort must be directed toward ending this war. And I hope that the next Environmental of Europe conference will be held in Ukraine on the slope of the Dnipro River. And the delegates will be listening to the singing of the birds and not to the sound of air raid sirens. We have already drawn conclusion and are moving forward despite the release of war. And we are waiting for the conclusion from the whole of Europe. Ukraine offers to create a global platform for assessing environmental damage caused by military operation. This platform will be created after open consultation within the framework of COP27 conference to be held in Sharm el-Sheikh. We ask for the support of the entire civilized world for this project. If Europe doesn't join the efforts, Europeans will see the consequence of Russian aggressions in their medical tests and medical records. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dear Minister, we are already seeing the consequences and the implications of an ongoing war, and we will once more say that we will continue to support Ukraine no matter what, because it's not about Ukraine, it's about Cyprus, it's about Europe, it's about the whole world. Thank you, dear Minister. May I also invite now Kaupo Heinma, Deputy Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment of Estonia, to make an intervention. Dear Deputy Secretary General.
Yes, I'm here.
There you are.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, let me thank the host country, Cyprus, as well as UNECE Secretariat for organizing this important conference. Secondly, I totally support the previous speaker and Estonia condemns Russia's unprovoked and unjustified act of aggression against Ukraine. Thirdly, I would like to share with you an interesting coincidence that the entry into force of the Protocol on Strategic Environmental Assessment to the Convention on Environmental Impact Assessment in a transboundary context, ESPO Convention, which was adopted in 2003 in Kyiv, Ukraine, was followed by Estonia's ratification in 2010. I believe that the protocol on SEA has a key role in contributing to the implementation of sustainable development goals. The protocol has proven to be a valuable international treaty in ensuring the early integration of environmental, including health considerations, in the development of plans and programs. As a result, a high level of protection of the environment is provided also in terms of developing sustainable infrastructure. Moreover, preventing, reducing, and mitigating adverse effects is our joint obligation and responsibility. Also, the protocol on SEA provides a legal framework for assessing significant environmental effects thoroughly and systematically in the decision-making procedures. SEA includes consultations with authorities and, if needed, also between the concerned parties in the form of transboundary consultations. Furthermore, public participation is the cornerstone of impact assessment. Nevertheless, the legal text nor countries can always be prepared for something that can unexpectedly occur in practice. I'm referring to the COVID-19 pandemic. Presumably, at the beginning of the pandemic seemed as a major obstacle in undertaking public participation in an effective way, but it find alternative and new solutions. For instance, now in Estonia, public hearing meetings in virtual or hybrid format is a common practice. The development of sustainable infrastructure usually requires both SEA for the plans or programs at the strategic level and EIA at project level. We also know that in principle, the two impact assessment instruments have similar structure and objectives. At the same time, it is important that the procedure itself have to be effective as well. Our experience in developing infrastructure projects shows that the level of detail of the assessment has to be very high already at the strategic level. Therefore, I would like to raise the following question. Could we someday streamline SEA and EIA into one comprehensive impact assessment which does not distinguish the strategic and project levels? This is already relevant. However, the task of developing such international assessment lies ahead. To sum up, I would like to repeat the benefits of the protocol on the SEA. At the same time, we have to bear in mind that there is always room for improvement. I encourage and invite other countries who have not yet done this to become a party to the protocol on SCA. Your attention.
Thank you so much for your intervention as well. There is always room for improvement. And let's proceed now to Mrs. Hatzi Stosic. The 6th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference was held in 2007 in Belgrade, Serbia, and therefore I now invite Mrs. Hatzi Stosic, State Secretary of the Ministry of Environmental Protection of Serbia, to make her intervention. There you are. Please, yes, you may proceed.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to have the opportunity to participate in this prestigious conference. And today I'm addressing you on behalf of the delegation of the Republic of Serbia, as well as my own behalf. The Environment for Europe process is a unique and major environmental process within the UNEC region, which has established the framework initiatives, further resulting in the adoption of a number of important regional multilateral environmental agreements. A great number of conventions, protocols, environmental performance review, and several regional strategies are being implemented at the level of member state with the aim of creating a high-level platform for discussion, deciding, and joint efforts in solving environmental priorities across the 56 countries of the UNC region. At the same time, service a regional pillar for sustainable. Each of the past conferences contributing to strengthening of cooperation, identification of key problems, and launching of new environmental initiatives on the territory of Europe. As new environmental problems emerged, the ministers of the environment advocated developing of new strategies and programs, all with the aim of effectively addressing new challenges and efficiently solving the existing problems. And let me take this opportunity to remind you that back in 2007, Belgrade hosted the 6th Ministerial Conference, Environment for Europe, and welcomed ministers and high-ranking officials from 51 UNEC member states, as well as representatives of numerous international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders. Belgrade Conference has then considered a contribution conference, as it focused for the most part on the progress achieved in the implementation of environmental policies since the conference held in Kiev, the importance of capacity building and partnership, as well as the future of the Environment for Europe process. This is when the important decision concerning a reform of the Environment for Europe process in order to ensure that the process remains relevant and valuable in the future, and to strengthen its effectiveness as a mechanism for improving environmental equality and the lives of people across the UNEC region was made. In order to address the identified issues, the main goals of the reform were defined, among which strengthening the efficiency of the process and supporting contemporary priorities and needs in the development of the political and economic situation the regions stood out. We proudly point out that the Republic of Serbia and its Ministry of Environmental Protection have a representative in the Committee on Environmental Policy, which is the highest administrative body of the process. Thus, since 2004, our country and the ministry to our representative continuously contribute to initiating and facilitating cooperation in our region, supporting addressing of priorities in the implementation of national environmental policies, as well as the improvement of cooperation with the civil society organization, public and private sector. As a part of the Environment for Europe process, the so-called Belgrade Initiative, a truly significant initiative for the Republic of Serbia at the moment, which aimed to strengthen regional cooperation on climate change in the Southeast Europe, was initiated. One of the components of this initiative was to integrate a newly established sub-regional virtual center for climate change in the Republic of Hydrometeorological Institute in Belgrade, with the aim to coordinate activities that support the development and implementation of a regional multidisciplinary framework action plan, as well as climate-related programs and projects. On that occasion, the minister adopted the ministerial declaration entitled Building Bridges to the Future, which supported the invitation of the UNC member states to work on improving the quality of environment, thus contributing the preservation of peace, stability, and sustainable development in the whole UNEC region. And ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleague, I would use this opportunity to invite you once again to point to the urgent necessity to further consider the integration of environmental issues in all sectoral policies in order to ensure the economic growth based on sustainable development principles and to foster partnership and closer cooperation of all stakeholders in the UNEC region. Thank you for your attention.
Hvala vam, Mrs. Hatzis-Tosic. And indeed, cooperation is the key solution to proceed further. We proceed now to Mrs. Zulfia Suleimanova. Is that correct? Thank you. The 7th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference was hosted in 2011 in Astana, Kazakhstan. Hence, I invite Mrs. Zulfia Suleimanova, Deputy Minister of Ecology, Geology and Natural Resources of the Republic of Kazakhstan, to make an intervention.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to address you all at the 9th Ministerial Conference, Environment for Europe. 5 years have passed since we last met, and we are very happy to meet our dear partners and friends again in good health. We believe this gathering will result in stronger partnerships and new bold actions. The pan-European process has served as an ultimate and robust process to strengthen environmental governance and assessment in the pan-European region. Although complex, this platform became indispensable for the member states in addressing the most pressing environmental challenges. In 2011, we hosted 7th Ministerial Conference in Astana, where 2 themes were in focus: green economy and preservation of water-related ecosystems. Today, against the unprecedented challenges that our economies face due to COVID-19, we see that green economy is a tool to build back better and build back greener. Then, Kazakhstan has brought to the table its experience that stems from our location as a bridge between Europe and Asia, and we put forth the Green Bridge Partnership Program that aims to join the efforts of the states of the 2 continents in transition to a green growth through mutual exchange and partnership. We still believe that in the idea that only together we can build back a greener future. So let me invite you to join the Green Bridge Charter developed in implementation of Green Bridge Partnership Program. At the country level, of course, we are also committed to this, to promoting green economy, and we have adopted a concept of transitioning to a green economy, and this year we shall be revising it to update the objectives and approaches. Another issue that we raised in Astana was the importance of preserving water-related ecosystem. This problem became even more critical with the looming climate crisis. The effects of climate change are especially profound in Central Asia, which is experiencing a massive pressure on its water ecosystems, exemplified in melting glaciers, reduced water flows, and shrinking of the water bodies. Here again, partnership and cooperation are critical in minimizing the vulnerabilities and maximizing the benefits for the people and for the planet, including within the Astana Water Action. The Astana Water Action was one of the key outcomes of the 2011 Ministerial Conference, and it is uniting more than 20 countries and several institutions in promoting sustainable water management. So we continue supporting this action. Also, we have joined the Convention on the Protection and Use of Transboundary Watercourses in International Lakes, and we are currently working on the possibility of joining its protocol on water and health. Since joining the pan-European process, 3 environmental performance reviews have been conducted in Kazakhstan by the UNECE mission, which served a solid basis for harmonization of the environmental legislation of the Republic of Kazakhstan with the pan-European practices. As such, in new environmental code, we have introduced the strategic environmental assessment, ratios of permissible anthropogenic impact on environment, and best available techniques. We're further improving regulation that deals with public access to information and participation in the decision-making process. So as you see, Kazakhstan is using all the initiatives that were put forth at different pan-European conferences. In conclusion, we would like to thank our partners and UNECE for fruitful cooperation, and we look forward to working together in achieving our common goal of preserving the environment. And we would like to wish the best of luck to the 9th Ministerial Conference and its host, Cyprus. I believe it will be a success. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well done. Unprecedented challenges indeed, and partnership and cooperation is the key answer. Again, thank you so much for your intervention, and I now invite, I know we're just currently out of time, but I'm in a difficult position to stop anyone. So we have to be a little bit careful with our time. And I'm not talking about Mrs. Zulfia Suleimanova. She was on time. I'm talking for all of us. So I now invite Mrs. Nino Dandilasvili. Is that correct? Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia, to make an intervention as the 8th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference was held in Batumi, Georgia in 2016. Dear Deputy Minister, where are you?
I'm here.
There you
Thank
are.
you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much. So nice to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to represent the Ministry of Environment, Protection and Agriculture of Georgia at the 9th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference, which is an effective high-level platform in the field of environment protection in our region. Let me, of course, express my sincere appreciation to the UNEC Secretariat and the government of Cyprus for consolidating their efforts to conduct this event, and of course, warm welcome and exceptional hospitality in this beautiful city of Nicosia. Today, we can firmly state that all the Environment for Europe conferences were remarkable in specific directions, addressing the two important themes, greening the economy in the pan-European region and improving air quality for a better environment and human health during the most recent 8th Environment for Europe Ministerial Conference, which was held in Batumi in 2016, was really exceptional for its initiatives. Actually, two important documents were adopted during this time: Batumi Action Plan for Cleaner Air, so-called BACA initiative, and Batumi initiative on greening the economy, so-called Big E initiative, which was also mentioned by Ms. Olga Algairova. Moreover, with the adoption of Batumi Ministerial Statement on Education for Sustainable Development, education for sustainable development aspects were further strengthened and promoted, and that was also an important initiative. Batumi Action for Cleaner Air, aiming to support countries' efforts in improving air quality and protecting public health and ecosystems, was launched by 27 countries and 4 organizations. In total, 110 new voluntary commitments have been submitted. SDG-oriented Batumi initiative on greening the economy, which operationalizes the pan-European strategic framework for greening the economy during the period of 2016-2030, comprises voluntary commitments by interested countries and organizations, both public and private, in the form of green economy actions. The fact that 123 commitments were submitted by 27 countries and 13 organizations can be considered as an indicator of the need of initiatives for greening the economy. Despite the challenges that has been caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's aggression against Ukraine, which Georgia strongly condemns, initiatives were implemented successfully. Furthermore, it is noteworthy that Batumi initiative on greening the economy is still continuing for Nicosia for Europe conference, which can be considered as the indicator of the success of so-called Big E initiative. Let me emphasize that Big E would not be so eminent without the support and the help from Switzerland. Thus, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Switzerland for the leadership of the development of this very important initiative, both in Batumi and Nicosia as well. To sum up, the Batumi Ministerial Conference played an important role in promoting green economy development and scaling up the education for sustainable development segment as well, which is even enhanced in Nicosia. I'm convinced that this process will strengthen its roots in order to continue this tradition in a decent way, which will help the international community in our region and even beyond to deepen cooperation in growing the ambition for our better environment. From Batumi, cleaner, greener, smarter, to Nicosia, transforming planet and ahead. And lastly, I hope that the next Environment for Europe conference will be held in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We hope that too. We hope that too. You're correct about the air quality, greening the economy, and thank you for all your statements. And I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers for their useful insights and for sharing their experience of the long journey from Dobris to Nicosia today, as all these years passed by, and it's unbelievable and exceptional to see all these updates. But the most important thing is to see and realize the work we have in front of us and the responsibility, the extra responsibility we have in front of us. And that brings us to today, and the 9th Environment of Europe Ministerial Conference 2022, Nicosia, Cyprus. So now we do have a surprise, don't we? And I will pass the floor to the Secretary Conference, Mr. Zalomtantse. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished Madam Chair. We have a small cake here for the hosts of the 8 conferences, plus, of course, our distinguished chair of today as a representative of Nicosia Conference. And I would invite now the countries who have hosted the delegations, the representatives of the delegations who have hosted in past the conferences to take family photo here together with a cake. And our photographers can tell us where is the good place for that. So please, Czechia, Slovakia, Switzerland, Bulgaria, Denmark, Ukraine, Serbia, then Kazakhstan and Georgia. You are invited to take a photo here. Madam Chair.
Thank you.
If I
May I have a piece of cake as well?
If you prefer, you can have 2. Thank you. Distinguished delegates, you might notice that we are slightly late with our program. And I would ask you now to listen to me because the announcement is about the program. In agreement with our colleagues who should have the agenda items of today morning delivered now, we will postpone 2 agenda items for tomorrow and accommodate them into the plenaries of tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon, which might shorten a bit the roundtables. Sorry to moderators, but I think this is the only way. So now we continue with the program as it was announced. So I would like now to ask our chair to continue without these 2 agenda items and to go directly to maybe the break and the photograph and all which is there. But before that, I think the host country secretariat, Aravela Zachariou, whom I think all of you know now, will announce how technically the break should be arranged. And then, Madam Chair, that's your responsibility to announce it. Sorry. Thank you very much. This is ad hoc arrangement now. Thank you.
Thank you, Zhal. Some organizational issues that I would like to announce to you. First is after you conclude this session, we will have the family photo outside at Philoxenia. And we will start also outside is the lunch. Is the lunch. So the people that will stay in Philoxenia can have from 1 till 3 a break lunch. And for the people that will move for the side events, we have arranged in the halls where the side events will take place to have light lunches there. The passes will start moving from here, from Philoxenia to the Cyprus Institute in 3 rounds. The first round is at 12:40, 12:50, and 1 o'clock. So keep this time for the people that they have to move for the Cyprus Institute for side events. There are 3 routes for shuttle buses, 12:40, 12:50, and 1, where you can have there your lunch, okay? Thank you.
So thank you for your patience and your participation. Thank you, Jar, for saving me 2 hours from my program. For the moment, I'm sure the discussions will be excellent later on, and I'm sure everybody understands and they will cooperate, and the moderator and our Minister of Tourism as well. So thank you once more. Please, we can gather outside for the family photo, and then you may follow the directions of Mrs. Aravella and the co-organizers as they already have been announced. Thank you so much.